Boker Tov, everybody. Good morning. Can you guys hear me online? Okay, great. It's good to see you. This is our last class. So that was the appropriate response. Thank you for that. I have enjoyed teaching this class. I can't say what's going to be next year. I'll be in a new position, and we'll see what the powers that be want to do. But I think that I hope the class will continue on whatever level they decide. We're going to go to the news. Thank you for your help today. Appreciate it. A round of applause. Not an easy job. And I say this every week, but because it's such it really catches me by surprise how many unexpected things could happen between one Shabbos to the next, like 1 week to the next. It's like you couldn't possibly guess what's going to be.
You planned it better.
So, Naftali Bennett, and by the way, I look at this on Sunday morning around 7 o'clock. I read through this, and by 9:30, there's things I didn't see before. Okay, so here we are. Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid announced united run under Bennett in 2026 elections. Amid Haredi draft battle, High Court orders government to financially sanction draft evaders. Report Israel sent Iron Dome and troops to help defend UAE during Iran war. Prime Minister says Hezbollah dismantling ceasefire with Lebanon. Okay. So just as a note, and we have a long way to go between now and the elections. So I don't want to take a lot of time trying to...
When are the elections?
Well, that's a great question. I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is understandably trying to push the elections as far as possible into the future, because were the election to take place today, it depends on what news. Again, it's like whatever polling site. Channel 12 in Israel is showing, and Channel 12 is, I think, one of the most popular news shows in Israel, is showing that if there was an election today, he would get, Prime Minister Netanyahu's party would get about 55 seats, which is his lowest numbers, according to Channel 12. But Channel 14 is saying that the numbers are closer to 65 that he would get 65 seats, would be his highest number. So I have no idea what that means. But I think it's safe to say, I do think it's safe to say that the Iran war presently is not going going as well as I think the Prime Minister thought it would, and not only the Prime Minister but members of the Mossad, etc. That doesn't mean that they're not succeeding. It just means that the war is at a very, very important juncture, and we will see what happens. But Naftali Bennett has actually made significant inroads in the electorate, and is more popular than I think he's ever been, and that's of interest. And one of the reasons for his popularity is, on the one hand, he is a pro-settler. Pro-settlement, and has visions of greater Israel, and that's no secret. But I think what also has been driving his popularity is his stand on the Haredi draft. Okay? So that's important. And that is, there's a significant undercurrent in Israel of people being very, very angry about the decisions that the Netanyahu administration has made to accommodate the Haredi community in this issue. It is a significant issue, and so Bennett is very popular as a result of that. Yair Lapid, I think, Jack, you made this point last week, but I think it's important to also underscore, who has served, both of these men, Bennett and Lapid, have both served as prime minister of Israel. So Bennett is in the ascent, and Yair Lapid, who is very well known in American circles, was a very popular newscaster in Israel, and speaks his English is very, very fluent, is at his lowest ebb in politics. It's not even clear that he could clear the numbers to even get a seat in Knesset. So in a sense, Bennett is throwing Yair Lapid a lifeline. But he does have a following, so it's interesting to watch. Let's keep scrolling down. This is where I thought we were going to be spending most of our conversation today. This is so I think we're all aware that Prime Minister Netanyahu is being tried for a bribery scandal. I'm not passing judgment one way or another, but there was enough evidence to create the trial. There are terms in Hebrew, the equivalent of witch hunt, that we hear so regularly, and that has certainly been Prime Minister Netanyahu's claim, that this is the only way that you can bring my administration down. And it's all sort of optics and dirty politics. There are others who will say that this is a corrupt administration. There are all kinds of issues which we're not going to go into right now. What I think is very important to touch upon is that the reason that the president of Israel is now involved in this conversation has everything, 100% everything, to do with President Trump.
Yeah.
And President Trump has made it clear that he would like to see Bibi pardoned. I don't think there was actually any other way to read that particular statement from President Trump. And he put a fine point. I'm sorry.
He pardons everybody.
Well,
Yes. And guilty.
everyone in America. So the finish here is that he's part of pardoning people in Israel or in other countries. And so the bottom line here is, and President Trump, as he's wont to do, put a fine point on it by attacking people who he didn't think were on the same page as he is, and that would be President Herzog. Because President Herzog has the power to pardon. And what President Herzog is now looking for is some sort of off-ramp. Because he does not want to pardon the president, because the president does not want to pardon the prime minister, because the prime minister you normally pardon someone who's admitted guilt. Right? That's why you're pardoning them. But here, what President Trump is asking for, and obviously Prime Minister Netanyahu is all in favor of, is a preemptive pardon. This is a preemptive.
Like what Biden did with all the people.
This is not. I'm not making a joke out of it. I'm not making a joke out of it at all. But that's what's being asked for. That's what's being asked for. And so, needless to say, President Trump has put his thumb right on a very divisive issue in Israel. And aside from the fact, some would argue that this is all political, and others would argue this is an issue of justice and equal justice under the law, and the fact that he is prime minister doesn't mean he's king, and even King Solomon was subject, or King David was subject to these kinds of things. You can make these arguments both ways, but the thing that makes this even more complicated is the fact that President Trump has remarkable power in Israel. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. That is a fact. That is a fact. And wherever you are on the political spectrum, Israelis will openly say that the real prime minister of Israel is President Trump. And what he says goes. So, you don't need very much. I don't need to prove this point with you. Just see what happened in Lebanon, right? But we'll come to that in a minute as to what's happening in Lebanon. But the fact that Israel immediately stopped as soon as President Trump said so, which more than I think it was 67% of Israelis were unhappy with that decision. They wanted this to continue because the bombing continues. But how quickly Prime Minister Netanyahu responded when President Trump said to stop, that's all the proof you need. So this is I'm sure that Prime Minister Netanyahu is delighted to see President Herzog squirming here, because he is squirming right now. And so what is he saying? He is saying he's looking for a plea deal. What he wants is a plea deal. And then he will talk about pardon. So so he's pretty obvious what's going on. But in order to make a plea deal, what must you do first?
Acknowledge guilt.
You have to acknowledge guilt.
Right.
It is highly unlikely. And I'm not a prophet, I'm not telling you the future. But from where we sit right now, okay, let's do it this way. How many people in this room, by show of hands, and if you're online, well, I won't be able to see your hands, but if you're in the room, by show of hands, how many people in this room believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu will be acknowledging guilt in any way, shape, or form? If you're online, just note that no one raised their hand. No one. Zero. So this is so to be continued. To be continued. Scroll down a little bit more, please. I'm going to skip this part. I'm skipping it not because it's not important, but it's not directly pertinent to Israel. The issues with Iran continue, and the drama continues. We've talked about this week after week. I think that it is important to note that as expert of negotiators as the Iranians are, they have shown remarkably bad judgment over the years. They have continued to misplay their hand, and that has opened the door to the fact that for the first time, their cities are being bombed. They claim that time is on their side. That is the claim. And that they're watching the 60-day time clock go. They're watching the Democratic Party and their feelings about the war. They are also watching Republicans who have expressed concern. They're also paying attention to people like Tucker Carlson, who has openly this past week said that he is sorry that he supported President Trump. and it's specifically because of this war. And so the Iranians think time is on their side, and President Trump and the administration is claiming that they are simply desperate, and they're hiding their desperation because as the Strait of Hormuz is closed, their entire economy which was in terrible shape to begin with, is just underwater. And how long can the administration last? It's important to note that Iran is a country that does make sacrifices, if you will. They're willing to take the hit, and they have done that again and again. And it's important to remember that Iranians sort of have a zero-sum game when it comes to negotiation, all or nothing. And the only time that the Iranians made a concession in negotiation was in the Iraq War, when they were fighting Iraq. And it was a brutal, bloody, many-year war. 8 years. And the Ayatollah, who made the decision to give in on some of their key points, said it was like drinking a chalice of poison. A chalice of poison. That's all you need to know, fast forward to 2026, as to how Iranians look at negotiation. Right? The Americans don't see concessions. I'm talking about the American people. And I would say most of the government, does not see negotiation as a chalice of poison. I think what does the people say? That successful negotiation is when both parties go away unhappy.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
That's how Americans normally look at negotiations. You give something, you don't want to give in, we'll give something. And the goal is to come back to status quo, something that's not war. So what's important, I think, for us in this room to think about for a minute is that the entire perspective towards negotiation may not be the same. And here I'm going to speak just on a person. I'm speaking for myself. Americans often play to the conceit that everyone in the world thinks like Americans. And no matter how many times countries around the world show the United States or Americans that they actually don't think like Americans, they have their own way of thinking, Americans continue to go back to, well, how could they not think that, right? It's sort of like the definition of insanity, right? You keep doing the same thing over and over, hoping for a different outcome. And the percentage of Americans who are against this war is rising at a precipitous rate, and we should be paying attention to that. Right? We should be paying attention to that. I don't have much more to say about this, but go ahead, Neil, and then.
I have been hesitant to bring this up, but I figured it's the last class, so I might as well.
Just go for it, Neil. Get it off your chest. Get it off
my chest.
Go ahead.
In 2015, John Kerry had a team of people. John Kerry, they had this JCPOA agreement, and in that agreement, on maybe the first or second page, there was a statement in bold letters that Iran promised never to have a nuclear weapon. And that agreement has since been torn up. Do you think that if that agreement was still in force, we would be where we are today?
If that agreement was still in
Because
force,
it was working.
Okay, let me just say two.
Why they have-
I'm not the only one who can answer.
All the inspections show that.
Okay,
No, no.
wait, 1 second. Just 1 second. 1 second.
That's why I was hesitant to bring this up. Because I knew it would be a little fireworks with some.
I don't think we're even going to start class before it ends.
I knew there would be
I think
fireworks, but
there's two things
I had to get it off my chest.
Two things to keep in mind. Number one is that the JCPOA allowed for Iran to build nuclear weapons after a specific time period. So whatever Iran said or didn't say, the JCPOA had a sunset provision, right? It's over. It just ends, right? So the idea of the Obama administration, what goes into this, right? Well, 15 years is a long time, and in over 15 years, there might be a change of government. Things could change in Iran. I think that was kind of the way we looked that it was looked at, and that maybe we could bring Iran into the family of nations. I think that's kind of the idea. The other thing to keep in mind here is that right now, one of the key provisions of the United States' plan for, one of their negotiating points is that Iran has to turn over its uranium. The United States will guarantee all the uranium Iran needs for peaceful purposes, but it will not allow Iran to be in charge of developing its own uranium. I'm not stating this correctly, and why are they doing that? Because Iran has presently, they have what's the right term for this?
Highly enriched uranium.
They have enriched uranium.
60%.
They're stockpiling enriched uranium at numbers that have nothing, that are only connected to weapons grade uranium. There are other people, just to kind of make this more complicated, there are other people who say they've been doing it the whole time. Other people, especially you'll see this in the New York Times, argue that since President Trump ended the JCPOA, the Iranians have felt free to do this, but up until now, they hadn't been doing this. I think the history of Iran is one where they have let's just say they have a different understanding of truth, of what that means. So I don't have a good explanation for you, but what I will say, Neil, is that the ballistic missile issue was absent in the JCPOA. And that was an issue that Israel was raising at the time that was ignored. We see how many, and by the way, the IDF has admitted that they misjudged the number of missiles and missile launchers that Iran has. They have misjudged it. So to give them a free hand to build as many ballistic missiles as they want, and at the same time have a sunset provision for them to create nuclear weapons, Iran, they take the long view. They can wait 20 years. They have a clock in the middle of Tehran that's set to, I think, 2040 something, which is the date when Israel will be destroyed. Well, if you start adding up the numbers, right, that may have been based on the JCPOA idea. Well, okay, we'll wait, and then we'll kill them. We'll send a nuclear bomb and kill them. That's part of the plan. So I think one of the issues, and I'll stop after this, one of the issues that President Trump is really struggling with, he's struggling with not being Jimmy Carter, being held hostage to the Iranians. I think that is a fear that he has expressed. The other fear is to come back with a deal that is the equivalent of the JCPOA. So he's very intent on showing that that his administration has created a much tougher deal.
Well, the JCPOA,
That what's that?
but he didn't like the JCPOA.
He
He thought
did.
it wasn't good enough.
It'll be his
Exactly, but so the
So
whole
it has to be better.
that's the whole
Better
that's the whole point. The whole point is that he may be stuck with his own version of the JCPOA. We can't answer any more of these questions, not only because time has ended for this, but it's also just important to note that this is what's going to be unfolding. Go ahead, Michael.
No, I'm just going to say it was the old agreement that had been ratified. It was working in the International Atomic Energy Agency came in to confirm that.
Yeah.
And the idea was, under the old one, that over time, all those years, there would the extra communications, the actions would be greater, and the current relations. And
Exactly. So the idea would be slowly but surely, they would be brought back into the family of nations. It doesn't. Although the Atomic Energy Commission has been complaining regularly, and it's become clear that there are all kinds of secret sites all throughout Iran. It is a very complicated issue that's going to be continuing on. Okay, we'll get 2 more comments. 1, 2.
I have a question. Do we know specifically what the proposals, what the points of the proposals from the Trump administration are? So I think part of the problem and why there's more and more people against the war is that I think the administration here has failed to articulate the particular points that they are now advancing in these negotiations.
Well, I think. Well, okay. What you're saying is correct, but I don't think President Trump has been shy about saying no more nukes. No, I mean, he keeps saying it over and over again. If that's the American negotiating point, that's kind of the Thomas Friedman approach. Make this the point. This is it, right? Forget about everything else, but that's it.
But then they would leave in the missiles. See, if the only point is no nukes,
I think that's. I
and
think
doesn't address the proliferation of missiles.
This is
then what
a
we
hornet. I'm not pretending that I have the solution, but it is a hornet's nest. Jack?
There's an Arabic expression called takaya, which means when you're negotiating with the infidel, or in Arabic it's called the kufr, you don't have to have anything that's truthful. And when I used to deal with or have discussions, one of the other weaknesses in the American system is this friend of mine said, you have elections every 2 years. We don't worry about elections. And he did it with a big smile. So you have to understand, this is not the Middle West. This is the Middle East. No. And this is dealing with a very different culture.
Just to add to that, and I'm not adding to it, I just want to just also state that from the Iranian leadership's point of view, this isn't simply a matter of honor. It's not simply all about geopolitics. This is messianic. This is messianic, and we fail to acknowledge that at our own risk. Right? I'm not suggesting that's good or bad. I can say it's bad for Israel, but it's not evil. It is a religious philosophy. But it is a religious philosophy, and no amount of negotiation is going to dissuade Iranians from that idea. And Jack is quite correct that is part of a negotiate. You know, if you're dealing with a foe that is stronger than you militarily, then you can negotiate now. But don't forget that the day will come when we're going to tear that agreement up when we have strength on our side. I think that is a fact within that type of their type of thinking. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Lots more to talk about, but we're not. Today is our last class, and we're talking about the effects of October 7th in America. Last week we talked about the effects of October 7th in Israel, but today we're going to be talking about that. And I've been thinking about, well, gosh, where do we even start to have this conversation? We can pass out the sheets for today. And then I got an email from our very own Congressman Mike Quigley.
Oh.
What's that? So Mike Quigley is someone who I know pretty well. Been to our home for Seder some years ago. I know him well. And if you would have had a conversation with me on October 6th and asked me, where's Mike Quigley on Israel? I would have unhesitatingly said, he's a strong advocate. He's on important committees in Congress, and he has always been a stalwart. When I approached him, when I lobbied in his office, he always started with all of the talking points that you would expect from a supporter of Israel. Since October 7th, there's a perceptible change. And he is thinking very seriously about running for mayor of the city. But like many Democrats, many Democratic elected officials, the new the ticket in to be considered a serious Democrat is to take a stand regarding arms to Israel and Israel's response to October 7th. So he put out a statement this past week that I believe was published in the Chicago Tribune. And I'm going to read the whole thing. It's a page long. After witnessing the horrific actions of the Israeli government in Gaza, the West Bank, and now the illegal and ill-conceived war with Iran, I have decided to co-sponsor both Block the Bombs Act and the Ceasefire Compliance Act. It's time we evolve how we provide military aid to Israel to ensure civilian lives are protected and international laws are applied consistently. We can do this while still ensuring defensive weapons, such as the Iron Dome, are protected. Israel and Palestine's future must be rooted in a two-state solution, but current U.S. policy is making that future increasingly impossible. On October 7th, Hamas committed a horrifying series of terrorist attacks on Israel. Hamas must be eradicated, but how Israel achieves that goal matters greatly. Along with many Americans, I've been alarmed by the scale of destruction and violence in Gaza. The Israeli government must be held to the same standard as other allies who receive U.S. security assistance. Humanitarian aid cannot be blocked, and human rights must be protected. To date, U.S. laws on military aid to Israel have not been enforced consistently. Quote, I have always supported Israel's right to defend itself, and I will continue to do so, but the Israeli government, under Prime Minister Netanyahu, has overseen the killing of tens of thousands of civilians, cut off humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza, and allowed settler violence and expansion in the West Bank. The increased level of violence in the West Bank and the extent of illegal settlements enabled by Israel's current leadership are deliberately engineered to put a future two-state solution out of reach. This is not only inconsistent with American laws, but our values and morals. So this is well, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
The Block the Bombs Act could be strengthened, including by providing clear incentives for Israel to change its behavior by conditioning aid rather than withholding it. But the bill is an important step toward rethinking how we provide military aid to Israel, I'm also co-sponsoring Representative Kasten's Ceasefire Compliance Act to restrict Israel from using U.S. origin weapons if they break the terms of October 2025 ceasefire agreement. It will limit U.S. weapons if Israel restricts humanitarian aid, annexes the West Bank, or fails to combat settler violence against Palestinian civilians. I also have serious concerns about the tone of this debate at home. Pay very careful attention about what he's about to say next. Because up till now, he hasn't really said anything that we haven't heard from a whole variety of. In fact, I would imagine that the people in the Senate who voted would probably sign on to this as well. But here, this is something that actually made me sit up in my chair when I read it. I also have serious concerns about the tone of this debate at home. Throughout the past 2 years and a half, my staff and I have met with organizations and constituents with a broad range of views on the war and how to end it. The vast majority of these meetings were passionate and respectful, allowing for open dialogue and difference of opinion. My discussion with AIPAC were the exception to the rule. The message from AIPAC was clear. You must support Netanyahu's government, regardless of credible reports of abuses in Gaza and the West Bank. We've also seen AIPAC pour millions of dollars into elections to feed any candidate who has dared disagree with them, highlighting both their hardline views and the ongoing problem of super PAC money in campaigns. We are at a turning point in the United States' relationship with Israel. I'm composing the Block the Bombs Bill and the Ceasefire Compliance Act for the same reason that I called for the negotiation of a Palestinian state and voted for the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, in 2015. While these actions have been met with frustration by some, I believe that they are all important steps towards reaching a two-state solution that allows both Israelis and Palestinians to live freely and securely. We must ensure U.S. military aid to Israel is not used to harm innocents. We must also continue to support defensive aid like support for the Iron Dome to protect the Israeli people. We must also take the terrifying rise of anti-Semitism across the USA seriously by speaking out when we see it and providing critical funding to synagogues, mosques, churches, and other houses of worship. We can no longer write Israel or any of our allies a blank check. We must hold Netanyahu accountable to move toward a world where Israelis and Palestinians can coexist peacefully and where anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are eliminated. I have stood up for a two-state solution since coming to Congress, and I'm not going to stop now. If you would have showed me this document on October 6th, I would have said, this is...
AI.
What's that?
Artificial intelligence.
Exactly right. This is what happens when you use artificial. Exactly. No, but I'm saying I just wouldn't. This is impossible to believe. Mike Quigley, this is what he's writing, and what I've noted, and I think you already know, is that this is normative. This is not an extreme position that's coming from an outlier. Mike Quigley is about as centrist, as a democratic centrist as you're going to find in Congress right now, right?
Did you talk to him?
So what's that?
Have you talked to him?
Not now. No, I talked to him. I talked to him last summer. We had lunch, and we had a long talk about this.
And you invited him.
And I
school.
felt like there was some disagreement, but I felt that there was still room for a conversation. I'm not sure that I would say, this is me talking, I'm also retiring in 2 months, but I'm not retiring from life, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't talk to him. But I don't see a reason for a conversation right now. I think I want to say that everything that he said was really challenging for me because it was very one-sided. I mean, that's how I'm reading it. But I want to say the statement about AIPAC to me was way over the line. And that is and so when you are pointing out that AIPAC is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and they're going to kill you if you don't agree with everything that they do,
Yeah.
that's a very dangerous signal to the larger world about the protocols of the elders of Zion and Jews in general. I'm going to make one more statement, and I'll let you jump in. Show me a pack that does things differently than AIPAC, and then we'll have a conversation.
Exactly.
But if AIPAC is acting like every other PAC, and they state openly that they're a political action organization, then we're creating a kind of a boogeyman scenario. This is all an introduction to our topic. What has changed since October 7th? This is a perfect example. Go ahead.
I was just going to say
I'm going to give you the microphone now because I want everybody to hear.
Putting anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in the same sentence, and that money should be given to mosques and churches for protection. That money should be given to mosques and churches for protection. It's not the same thing. So there isn't actually any room for conversation if you already put those ideas together. I don't think he doesn't understand. Like,
Can you say more?
there isn't an issue with Islamophobia in this country. Europe
Should be.
Europe, maybe. I don't think people are attacking Muslims. It's not the way that a synagogue is attacked every single week, right? Like, how much do we spend on security here at Anshe Emet?
Well, rather than debating Islamophobia in this country, when you walked into this building, how many layers of security did you walk through?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Or, you know,
And well, let me ask you this: if you would have come this morning, and the gate was open, and there was no security person in that booth, and then as you opened the door to the synagogue, there was no security person sitting at that security desk, you're going to tell me that you wouldn't have second thoughts?
Absolutely. After what happened in Swedish Covenant yesterday, yeah.
So the point is that I don't know that mosques have this kind. I'm not saying they don't have protection, but the level of protection that Jews are rightfully putting in their Jewish institutions is significant. And the unwillingness to acknowledge anti-Semitism as a separate and unique form of hatred, not to suggest that there is not Islamic phobia or that there's not racism, but that it is a unique form. That is really that's a chilling statement. Go ahead, Freddie. I'm going to come over with the microphone. Sorry, I'm going as fast as I can.
I would say I think it's important for you to talk to Mike Quigley about the AIPAC issues, since you're somebody that can make a call to him. And these kind of conversations do have an impact, where people at least say somebody's noticing what I'm doing, and I at least need to be a little more careful. Somebody who's significant is noticing what I'm doing.
I like what you're saying, but I would say that AIPAC has become the third rail for the Democratic Party. It's become the third rail in the Democrat. You say that you took money from AIPAC, right? Look, I think I've said all these things in here, but Michael Sachs, did I talk about this? So Michael Sachs is a guy, he's a billionaire. And he has been a true stalwart of the Democratic Party, and was I think he was the main planner, but at least amongst the main planners of the last convention that took place here in Chicago. He's a major contributor to candidates. And I would say that he is, I think that he's a centrist, but I think you'd have a hard time finding a more loyal member of the Democratic Party than Michael Sachs. And he was personally responsible for bringing Rachel and John Goldberg Poland to the convention. He was personally responsible for that. He made that, and that showed the kind of sway that he had. He has been attacked because he's a Jew and he's a supporter of Israel and etc. And he wrote a long editorial in an op-ed piece in the Tribune, where one of the things that he said was that he walked away from AIPAC for a while, but after October 7th, he came back to AIPAC, right? But it was what this was what the Greeks would call an apologia.
Yeah.
This was a explanation to try and clear his name, okay? The article was well written. It was certainly from the heart. The fact that he was writing it, right, that speaks volumes about what the world looks like after October 7th. Here's a guy who's done more for the Democratic Party than almost anyone in the last 10 years, and he's without a home. He's homeless, okay? But what was really, really interesting about that article and was chilling were the comments that came afterwards.
I loved them.
It was a total vilification of Michael Sachs, both as a Jew, and the thing that came up again and again and again was AIPAC. Again and again and again was AIPAC. So this is the change from October 7th to today is stunning. Go ahead.
How about Alan Dershowitz?
No, it's true. Alan Dershowitz has now walked away from the Democratic Party. Go ahead.
I was going to agree with you about the whole idea.
Oh, then don't stop. Continue. By all means. By all means.
AIPAC as being the dog whistle. I mean, I think it was last week where you discussed, is it Pastor Harris, somebody in his congregation came up to him and said, oh, but that person supports AIPAC, and you said that the pastor said, I know for a fact that person didn't even know what AIPAC was. It's sort of like from the river to the sea. It's a tagline that, they support AIPAC, forget it. And this just making AIPAC out to be a boogeyman, I think it's just frightening. But I at the Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration, I was really taken with the fact that, every politician wants to come to the St. Patrick's Day parade. Right. I mean, traditionally in Chicago, there wasn't one politician at the Yom Ha'atzmaut.
You noticed.
Well, Irene Pappas sort of walked around. Is that her name?
Maria Pappas. She's running for mayor. She's I think the comptroller.
Well, she was there. She was sort of walking around the stage, but I thought, maybe Maria Pappas is going to say something. Nobody came. Nobody said anything.
Yeah.
It's just like that
right. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, and but this is a major change that has taken place. Go ahead.
It's hard to summarize everything, I think, but I think feels like this conversation feels like it's more like black and white, like pro-Israel or anti-Israel. And I also feel like we're talking October 6th versus October 7th. I don't feel like that's the delineation, because obviously we know there are people who are going to be anti-Semitic on October 6th, on October 7th, regardless. But I think regarding Mike Quigley's, change over time, it wasn't just like October 7th he changed. It's like, it's seeing what's happened in the last 2 years. And I don't think it's without any merit. Like, I happen to agree with him for the most part. And I understand, I hear what you're saying about the AIPAC piece, and that is definitely more complicated. But I think Israel has a right to respond, and I think that October 7th was horrific, but I have been angered and upset by how far it's gone and the loss of life. I think last week someone said, if we look at how many people were killed on October 7th, that would be approximately the same as 50,000 people. You said that. But I do want to point out, in terms of calculations, if we look at how many Palestinians have been killed, if we even think that half of them were combatants, half of them were innocent civilians, that would be approximately 5 million Americans. So I grieve with what's happened, and I feel the alienation and anger at Israel. I do, and it's a struggle for me, and that's partially why I want to do this class. But I also don't want to lose, I believe in Israel, and I want to have this relationship. So it's been hard for me. That's what I'm trying to deal with. So I just want to say that I don't think it's, obviously we all know it's not just black and white, but I just feel like this conversation.
Emily, I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for saying that in this class, because I think it's so important that we as a community can sit together and talk without fear of reprisal or someone accusing you of being anti-Israel, because that's not the case. One of the byproducts of October 7th, and this was made clear in the podcast, American Jewry is struggling on these issues. They're struggling on these issues, and I think you articulated it really beautifully. So go ahead, Don.
I think the emphasis might have shifted, and we're now reviewing the dialogue since the accord or the treaty or the agreement dealing with the situation. In return for the hostages, the Israeli government was going to create a dialogue or was going to get involved, and there may be a disappointment that there hasn't been more done since October 25 or whatever the date was that there was this dialogue. And there's maybe some disappointment or some pressure to try and get the Israelis to follow through on what they had suggested or promised or emphasized. And the Americans and the world may now feel there is more need to put pressure on Israel to try and reach the agreement, since the agreement or the dialogue or the accord with the Gazans. And that may be more of a disappointment and a criticism than the original reaction at the time of the invasion. So I think that might be part of what is being expressed, that this is a way that the Israelis should bring this more to a conclusion quicker because of their agreement or their dialogue.
Okay, but if we're talking about Gaza, go ahead, give her the microphone. If we're talking about Gaza, then the Trump administration has given clear points to Hamas as to what they need to do, and they haven't been doing it. Now, Hamas is very isolated right now. They're very isolated, and I think a lot of the Arab countries are angry at Hamas for not saying anything or standing up. Like they're being critical of Iran when they were bombing the countries nearby. But we'll see. But there's a very clear plan of what they need to do in order to do that. So we'll see what happens. Go ahead.
Well, I want to concur with some of what Emily said. I think that for me anyway, some of what's happened since October the 7th is that I've realized more about what was going on before October the 7th. I think a lot of times when you see what looks like sudden shifts, they reflect things that have been, moving in a certain direction for a long time. I also think that the point that connects with both with what Emily said and what was in what we read is as the rabbi just said, the schisms within the Jewish community. Personally, I have two friends. The three of us are anthropologists. We were in grad school together. We supported each other's work. We're talking in 40 years here, right? So one of them has taken a very staunch anti-Zionist position. He said some very nasty things to my other friend. On Facebook, and there's this, thing going on, and they're still talking to each other. But, the relationship is clearly strained, and that's only one case, I think, out of many. But for me, as being part of a university, what I've realized is something that I think they didn't talk about enough in the article, and that's the whole, and it connects with what the rabbi said about all lives matter. It's the whole rhetoric around race and black versus white, and casting Jews as white and casting us as therefore the oppressor. And that's been, and also how that feeds into the settler colonialist ideology, because frankly, I certainly agree with the point that what's going on in the West Bank,
So you're struggling. You're struggling.
Right, I'm struggling.
Struggling.
But as I said, some of what I feel like has gone on for a long time is that the social sciences really become very ideological. That it's very difficult to have any discussion at a university where you somewhat dispassionately look at evidence and you try to get beyond using terms as accusations, whether it's settler colonial, and also you need to recognize that, not everything in the world is a nation state, and that maybe liberal democracy does play out differently in different places, and there's very little room for nuance, and universities were supposed to be a place for that, and I feel like for me that's changed.
Which is a very sad statement for someone who's devoted their entire life to academia.
In terms of what has changed since October 7th, first of all, I work in democratic politics, which has come with immense complications, I would say, over the past few years. So I think this conversation is unfortunately very relevant. But I think, to me, the biggest thing that's changed since October 7th is the rise of, what I think of, and I think the podcast kind of touched on this, as the illiberal left. I think that it is highlighted the decline of liberalism in general, politically on both sides, but just across our institutions in America.
And Israel.
And in Israel, yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing, but the only other thing I'll say, in terms of pointing out AIPAC as the boogeyman and making Jews the enemy, I think all of this has made it. I think we are in a time where people are creating permission structures to commit violence against Jews, and I think that has been the biggest change I have seen.
Describe it as
a permission structure.
What is that?
They're oppressors, therefore it is righteous to kill them. I think, to be honest with you, this is it's the crumbling of institutions, but it's also, we've seen this dozens of times through our history, but I think we're just back to one of those times.
Okay, one sec. Marcy Haas?
Yes, thank you. I was unmuting. I think it's, obviously we all know this is all so complex, but it bothers me very much because I feel like we look at all of these conflicts with a Western point of view. And Hamas does not function with a Western point of view. They hide among their children and they're sick, and they intentionally position themselves in a place where they use human shields, and they intentionally place themselves in a place where the civilian population will be harmed, and then Israel gets blamed for that. And I just find that really difficult. And the other part is, we talk about the West Bank, we talk about Gaza. They have very little to do with each other than that they're, not mostly Israeli. Because I agree, I think what's going on in the West Bank, the settlements, it's horrible, but it has nothing to do with Gaza.
The war in Gaza, although there are roots between some of the conflict in the West Bank and the war in Gaza, they really are in two different places. They have two different causes at this time. And Marcy and I both have trouble with them being lumped into one philosophy.
Right.
And I forgot what I was going to say. Well, that's it.
No, I think that's very helpful. It's a very helpful reminder that people do not think the same way, and they're very different philosophies, and that it has an impact. Okay, what I want to do is I want to kind of come back to the class stuff. So I'm going to try and do that. Look, I think this is our last class, so I want to make sure that people feel like we can talk. And okay, go ahead, Barry. But let's make these kind of short.
Sure.
Shorter. Not that anybody's was long. I just want to get to what we want to do.
So just 2 points. One is information. One is slight correction. Andrade was the Commissioner of Human Relations.
Human Relations. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay, good. Thank you for that. I'm sorry.
The other point is, I think too many people like Mike Quigley, that have historically been centrists, don't realize a major shift in the last decade has been a recognition of who you're dealing with. And this is a perfect example of trying to impose American values on other cultures. That Israel has been dealing for decades with an enemy that has no regard for fairness, for equality, and for many other things that Americans feel very passionate about.
Well, I think part of the question here, Barry, I think part of the question that you're raising is the view that Iran can be contained to the Middle East. This is not our problem. My problem is school systems in this country. My problem is unemployment in this country. My problem is, right, there's a whole array of social issues, and I'm a public official, so I was elected for that purpose, okay? So that's there are people that would argue that Iran has a lot of American blood on their hands, and they don't have any intention of containing this in the Middle East, but I don't think that's the general view of Americans. Like, why are we there? What are we doing there? And the only explanation is that that Prime Minister Netanyahu convinced President Trump to do this. That's the explanation that's been that has been forwarded again and again. Okay, go ahead.
One thing that I actually find very interesting overall, closer to my mouth, oh my goodness, nobody's ever told me I talk too loud. Excuse me, is that the only thing that I actually think that Hamas was ever truthful about was when they repeatedly said, no matter what, that they have not changed their covenant or manifesto that Israel, is to be destroyed. And they've come back and said, well, even if we don't do it this time, we'll do it next time or next time or next time. And no one ever, sort of raises that now or talks about that. And I think that's pretty significant that's, in terms of what they're planning to do and how they're, planning it. And that's where they are. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to move forward now. What did you think? I'm assuming everybody listened to the podcast at some point. What do you think the message of the podcast was? What was the message that Yehuda Kurtzer was putting forward in this podcast? Just in one sentence, what was the message?
Don't give up being a liberal Jew.
That, I think is okay. Don't give up being a liberal Jew. That was one take.
I think that he's kind of living in a fairyland that American exceptionalism is even still a thing, and what he said was American exceptionalism is very consistent with chosenness. They kind of dovetail. They reinforce the same kind of narrative. We go well together. But when American exceptionalism is no longer the thing, and chosenness is a problem in the narrative of what's going on, well, then we've got a conflict. And I think that's what he was really discussing the whole time.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Near the end, he quoted Howard Jacobson, and this line just stuck with me. He said, "Zionism is not a country, and it's not a government. It is the expression of a people's soul." And that just, no matter what's happening around us, I'm trying to keep that in the middle of me so that I can get through all of this.
Good. Good. What was his point? So we're hearing, because I have to believe that so far we've heard a lot of critical statements about Yehuda Kurtzer here, right? Anybody felt that he was speaking to them? Go ahead.
Well, I think what he said is that we've arrived at a time where there's more of a clear tension between identifying as an American democracy, having democratic values, liberal values, and also being, that Americans could kind of trust that you could have both of those and a commitment to Israel at the same time. And I think he's saying that we've arrived at a time where that may not be possible or comfortable. That's what I think. That's what I took out of it. This is a different time than we've ever experienced in our lifetime, certainly, Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And that those of us who, may have been liberal Jews may not have a home anymore, which is certainly how I feel.
I think that this is a really important. I want to just kind of stay with this for a second, because I think a lot of what Yehuda Kurtzer was saying, I think the Rashi on what he was saying was, I am very concerned that I no longer have a place within the classic liberal understanding, or my understanding of America has shifted. And so at the end he was saying, we need to fight, right? We need to fight for America. We need to understand what American values are. We need to engage in the political process, and we need to fight to, if not recreate, make a new, create a new framework for those values. I think that came across. Did that come across to anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay.
For what it means as a Jew.
What's that?
For what it means for us as Jews.
Exactly right. He's talking as an American Jew who has found himself really on the outside. And he's struggling. He was clearly struggling with this. I thought it was an important conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's I think all these are conversations, because you're hearing some people struggling, and they're talking, and they're smart people, and they're very committed people, and it's hard.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for us to be part of it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little bit of a backstory, which is part of the Kurtzer story. Daniel Hartman's daughter, Michael, married a settler. And so she gave a talk that was absolutely on what's called religious Zionism, which comes from a thing that we might remember called the Torah. And Daniel said to the group, that I will go to your Seder in Efrat on one condition, that we don't talk politics. But within Hartman Institute right now, as Michael, his pride and joy, and she's really a brilliant young lady, is bringing in religious Zionism into the Hartman Institute, Yehuda is feeling very uncomfortable. I know that personally.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
I want to turn to it. Is anybody online who have something you want to say? No one? Okay. Andrea? All right. I'll keep bugging you until you say something here. Yeah, say.
I have nothing to say on this. I think that
All right.
that
I think this is also part of the.
Marcy Scott wants
Okay,
to-
Marcy, thank you.
Actually, Scott this time. But,
All right, Scott.
I want to know. I agree with some what's been said about what the message was, but I thought there was also another message that maybe only I heard it. I don't know, and I may be wrong, but it's that while the Jews in the United States are struggling with Zionism and how our position in the United States is changing and maybe getting eroded, I also heard like that the Israelis were looking at us as older siblings saying, "We told you so." They have this feeling that that Zionism from afar would never work, and we were saying, "No, it's working in America. It's working in America," and now it's getting difficult to work in America, and the Israelis are going, "We told you so. We cannot bend to your political desires because it's never going to work anyway."
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's part of the challenge. Go ahead, Alan.
I know if you look at it historically, and Jack's point about religious Zionism now comes into play, we were always taught from the very beginning of the State of Israel, there were very different kinds of Zionisms. You had cultural Zionism, you had political Zionism, all the types of reclaiming the land and philosophic coming out of Eastern Europe in the late 1800s. I think what we're getting lost here is we're trying to redefine Zionism in itself, in terms of whether does it mean resettlement of the land, a governance of our own, being able to rule our own country, but that comes with great deals of baggage because, as every country knows, you pass your own laws, you have to live by those laws. So that what we're seeing in terms of Zionisms is trying to identify what we're calling liberal Zionism, what we call religious Zionism. Where do we all sit with this, where we fit, in terms of American Jews in the 21st century, trying to understand what was it like, our generation, some of us who were a little older, have grown up with Israel as age by age by age. We were born around the same time. We grew up around the same time. We went through adolescence at the same time. But Israel veered off very differently by 1956 and 67. Where do we fit now?
Well, I think there has been a struggle as to the Israel we want the world to see and the Israel that exists. Right? I think that's been a struggle since 1948 and beforehand, right? But I want to say that part of what's changed since October 7th is for Israelis to see what's on the other side. And the reality that they're living with, and that this war, that they're not going to be accepted in the way that they thought they were going to be accepted. And that there were certain myths that were punctured, right? So too for American Jews. When you saw kids on college campuses and you saw people in liberal circles saying that siding with Hamas or siding with the Palestinian cause and not really expressing the kind of sympathy that you might have thought was due to Israel, we started to get a sense that things had changed. in a way that we're, and so maybe what we believe the world looked like in 67, 73, or whatever age you want to pick, maybe that didn't really exist the way we thought it did. I mean, that's part of the challenge, and things are changing quickly. I think those are very real things. Go ahead.
So, something that's also nobody's really talking about here, but I really do think it's significant, is that there's like a cadre of influencers these days who come from the Arab world, who are becoming more and more outspoken about the morality of Israel and the morality of Jewish people, and have started to understand a little bit about our history, and have really become unbelievable allies. And the fact that they really seem to get it way more than people who we originally thought were our allies, who obviously are very superficially our allies because they no longer are there, are a voice that I think we all need to become comforted by, because I think a lot of the deficit, like I really am listening to Emily when Emily's talking, because obviously we all have like nephews or nieces or grandkids or whatever who feel the same way as you. And when no, really, I mean, really, and it's challenge. No, it's challenging at every holiday or every whatever, and it's necessary to talk these things through. But there's also, at the same time, that a generation's grown up thinking this way and believing this way and seeing themselves as part of the group, that the generation that they're in, and then there are these people who are from the Middle East who are saying, no, look at all that the Israelis are doing, and they're not publishing about the lengths that they're going to not bomb out these buildings, and they're building ropes so that they don't get booby trapped, and that they're trying to tell everyone not to be here. And if 75% of the buildings are gone, but 3% of the people are dead, then there's obviously not that many people proportionately, and they're showing how the Gazan, the trucks got hijacked by the Hamas, and why is nobody paying attention to that? Like, there's such a huge PR issue that if like really people understood it, like the people who are Arab who understand this, because they understand what Hamas is up to, they're like, well, yeah, and so this is really also part of the picture that should make us feel like a warm blanket, but there's just not enough of them, because obviously they're under siege as well. But it's a really important thing to note that there was just a huge delegation of Muslims who went to Auschwitz with the March of the Living. That is no small thing.
Right.
Yes.
That is no small thing.
Right.
That's
So
everyone in the world.
Right. And so again, America is not the only lens that people look at the world through. I want to look at. We're going to look at a couple of texts, because that's what we're supposed to be doing in here. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. I hope you are too. It's hard, but I think it's an important conversation.
I was a counselor.
So the first text is, it's about Shimon Bar Yochai, amongst others, who has a particular hatred of the Romans. But so this is an ancient text. Comes from the Babylonian Talmud 33b. And I want you to kind of look at this text and say to yourself, how would this apply today? Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai were sitting, and Rabbi Yehuda, the son of converts, was sitting beside them. Rabbi Yehuda opened and said, how pleasant are the deeds of this nation. He's talking about the Romans. They established markets, they established bathhouses, they established bridges. Rabbi Yossi was silent. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai answered and said, everything they established only for their own needs. They established markets to place prostitutes there, bathhouses to pamper themselves, bridges so they could take tolls. Yehuda went and retold their words, and it became known to the Roman government. They said, Yehuda was extolled, let him be extolled. Yossi was silent, let him be exiled to forests. And Shimon, who disparaged them, let him be killed. So I think it's a really interesting issue. Now, Rebbe Yehuda, because he is a Jew by choice, what the rabbis are picking up on here is the fact that he has an appreciation of the Roman Empire because he grew up there. And he's listening to the rabbis talking, and they're talking about the Romans. And he says, the Roman Empire has done some really remarkable things that we should celebrate. Rabbi Yossi says nothing. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai then, excoriates all the things the Romans do. Okay? Rabbi Yossi goes to the Romans. Rabbi Yehuda, I said, goes to the Romans. And so Rabbi Yossi is silent, so he's exiled. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who excoriated the Romans, he is hunted. He ends up going into a cave. It's a whole another story we're not going to have time for today. This is not a new problem for Jews. How do we understand the larger government? The United States of America has been very good to the Jewish people over the years. Right? All of us can testify to that. The United States of America is not a perfect country. Are there Jews in America today that look at everything that the United States does as being suspect? Or, right? And are there lots of Jews who say nothing? So I think it's a really interesting text to begin to kind of open up to. Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. The comment that you just made about the different people who are saying things today about Israel and the perspectives they have based on where they're coming from and so on. It's exactly the same.
Okay.
Centuries, millennia have gone by, and exactly the same thing is happening. There are different people saying different things, and different people are listening to them. And you go to the government, and whoever it is tells the government whatever they want to hear, they look and they say, okay, we're going to do this to this group, and this to that group, and that to the other group.
Well, I think that, look, you see this in so many different places. Go ahead.
But what Norma is also saying, not only was it true in the days of the Romans 2 millennium ago, but in every Jewish community, wherever we were, throughout all of history, leading up to today.
Right. But very few countries gave the Jewish community the impression that they would be accepted to the same way that the United States, beginning with George Washington and going forward. I want to skip now to the text number 2, because it's very important for us to look at Louis Brandeis. Louis Brandeis was convinced by who? Herzl. And but also Chaim Weizmann of the importance of Zionism. Chaim Weizmann, by the way, was English. Right, so he didn't grow up in Israel. He grew up in England. So it's very interesting people. But I wanna read this carefully. So I'm just going to read it slowly, because this is going to have a very direct effect on American Jewry. Louis Brandeis is a Supreme Court justice, so he's probably the most trusted Jew of his age.
He was later.
Right?
Harvard.
What?
First Jew to graduate from
First Jew to graduate from Harvard, yes.
No, but he became a Supreme Court justice after the war. This is before he becomes the justice.
Right, but the important thing, Alan, is that he is respected then, and this only takes on more credence.
He's respected both by Jews and by Americans.
Right. Okay, I'm going to read now. There is no inconsistency between loyalty to America I'll start again. There is no inconsistency between loyalty to America and loyalty to Jewry. The Jewish spirit, the product of our religion and experiences, is essentially modern and essentially American. Not since the destruction of the temple have the Jews, in spirit and in ideals, been so fully in harmony with the noblest aspirations of the country in which they lived. America's fundamental law seeks to make real the brotherhood of man. That brotherhood became the Jewish fundamental law more than 2,500 years ago. America's insistent demand in the 20th century is for social justice. That also has been the Jews' striving for ages. Their affliction, as well as their religion, has prepared the Jews for effective democracy. Persecution broadened their sympathies. It trained them in patient endurance, in self-control, and in sacrifice. It made them think as well as suffer. It deepened the passion for righteousness. There is no daylight for Louis Brandeis between being a Jew and being an American.
Correct.
Right? There is no daylight whatsoever, no inconsistency, etc. This is the foundation stone upon which American Jewry has been functioning. So it's no accident that in the sanctuary, I'm leaving the back windows off right now. I'll come to them in a minute. But in 1936, those windows were put in. And those windows are decidedly Zionistic. The window, the first window of Abraham is of Abraham looking at the land of Israel. The window facing Abraham and receiving the promise from God. The window facing him is of Chalutzim in Israel, waving to us to come to Israel.
And this was in 36.
This is in 36. So, but on the ceiling in that room, because that window was put in at the same time as those other windows, is this Americana window of Naaseh Adam Kitsalmeinu V'chid Mutenu. In Hebrew, let us make man in our image and our likeness, but it's translated, all men are created equal. And there's this interspersing of American symbols and Jewish symbols. So you have a lulav and an etrog, and you have the wheat of America. You have the shofar on one end, and you have the pen of the Constitution on the other. So it's a very interesting window. But this is Louis Brandeis in stained glass. It's Louis Brandeis, since there's no differences here. Okay? I just remind you that the back window was put in later, after the original windows were knocked out, where Goldman, and this is an interesting issue. So if you put this all together, what is America? Okay? And this is in 36. By 1940, you have American First Party and... Go ahead. Okay, Andrew, I'll call you in 1 second. You have the American First Party and all of the rest, and those windows in the back are shattered. Goldman clearly is unnerved by this, as any Jew would be. But his response is really telling. The fact that he puts George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and the New York Harbor welcoming immigrants to this country is a very bold statement where he's doubling down on Louis Brandeis and demanding that America be America. Okay? So Andrew, I'm going to continue with this for one more minute, okay? Just give me 1 more minute.
Fine.
Thank you. Let's pretend that this is a synagogue board meeting. I wouldn't wish that on you, but let's just pretend for a minute. Let's pretend. I was just joking. I'm the rabbi, and I come to you and I say, this is now 2026, and I say to you, I have a design for windows in our sanctuary, and I propose that we place the same windows up. We have, the first one is Abraham receiving the promise from God of the land of Israel as an eternal inheritance. The second window is Moses receiving the Torah. The third window are the prophets. Going across, you have the temple being destroyed in the beginning of the rabbinic age. The next window is about Jewish persecution. And the last window is of Zionism, chalutzim, in the sanctuary. Okay? And I want to also put up on the ceiling this Americana Jewish window. And I also want to put up George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and the New York Harbor. Okay? And I'm coming to you because I think this is who we are, and this is what we are. We are Americans, we are Jews, we are Zionists, we are all of these things, and we are very much part of the American experience, and we are also supporters of Israel. So I want to put these windows up. Do you think, raise your hand if you think there would be a positive vote for this? I'm not suggesting either way. I'm asking the question. That's all.
Today.
Okay, today. So the meeting's taking place tonight, and we're having the meeting now. Let's just have the meeting now. So how do you think this conversation would go?
The cost.
What's that?
What's the cost?
What is the cost? I see you've been to our board meeting. Okay, so I should have added, and I have a donor. Okay, go ahead. Everybody have a thought about this? Go ahead.
Sorry.
Funny enough, actually recently had almost this exact conversation at a dinner table with 8 or so 20 to 30-year-olds, where I was explaining the history of the windows because I think it's really interesting. And everybody at the table was like, why would they have that American imagery in there? And I was explaining, I was like, well, like historically it was built in like the 1930s, 40s. Fact check me. Yeah. And it was just so interesting how like this group of people, and I'm not saying I disagreed with them, but like there was no connection to them of their jewelry and their identity and the greater America as like a nation and American.
A connection between America and Judaism?
Yeah, there was no connection between being Jewish and being in America, and like there was no desire to connect those two things.
Wow, why not? Yeah, why not?
So, raise your hand if you think, and then Andrea, I promise I'll call you. Raise your hand if you think that the board would vote positively. And Anshe?
Yeah.
I think we would.
Halfway.
Okay.
Half of the older part would, and the older
So that's
part.
very interesting. That's very interesting. If the vote went to the entire congregation, because let's say the board came back and said, people are going to be worshiping in there. We have to take this to the entire congregation. So they sent ballots out to every member in good standing, and they took the vote.
Secret ballot.
Do you think that just consider you have members of this congregation that range from, I'm taking members in good standing, from 20 to 890. Do you think this would go through? Raise your hand if you think that the congregation, and let's say that it has much.
Can you give us percentages?
So I'd say this would be 51%. Actually, you know what? It's a very big vote. So I would say I don't think they would do it that way. I think they would say it has to be 3/4. It has to be 3/4 of the congregation because this is a very major decision for the community.
based on what you said, I just wonder if young people would see it as necessary to put.
I just wonder if younger people would see it as relevant to have American symbols there. Not that they would reject it, it just wouldn't occur to them, like you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
So wait. Neil, and then for sure, Andrew. I can't.
What I think in terms of what you're speaking about with the younger people, I don't think that the younger, and this is what I don't think that the younger generation realizes what America has given the Jews. Rabbi, you have often said, I think, that America was a great place for the Jews because we got opportunity here, and along with the fact that we were able to live a pretty democratic life here in the United States. And I don't know if that younger generation realizes that or not. What America's how open America has been to the Jews.
Yeah, but in all fairness,
what the Jews have done for America.
In all fairness, young Jews are growing up in a different America than you grew up in. I just want to say that. But go ahead, Andrea, you're up.
Mine goes back to the beginning of before you started this discussion. It goes back to Louis Brandeis, and I just want to point out that he made the statement that you just read, in April 1915. In 1916, less than or just a little more than a year later, he was nominated to become a member of the Supreme Court by President Woodrow Wilson. That's an incredible statement of acceptance of a statement that maybe wasn't well known, but something he had a record of having said that. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Alan, go ahead. All right, I tapped both
It's okay.
You noticed.
But I think we should recognize that in 1936, we were an anti-immigrant country.
Right.
The philosophy of this country was close the borders. Nobody come to, and especially Jews.
That's right.
And even under the Roosevelt administration, which we later learned a lot more about in terms of what was happening, when Rabbi Goldman, and correct me, his affiliation was he a Reconstructionist?
He was a conservative rabbi.
Okay.
He was conservative.
That think in terms of
he was also in 1936 he was president of the National Zionist Organization of America.
Okay. So when you think about the context of the windows and so on, I think you have to take into understanding what was happening in America, what was happening to the Jewish community in America, which was very silent.
Okay.
And it was being battered by the Nazi Party. It was being battered by anti-immigration, being battered by anti-Semitism of the 30s especially, and what was now happening in Europe. So that the Jewish community here was, if it was a vocal one, it was very isolated, but united in that isolation. And most American Jews, as Neil was saying, were probably happier being able to have a job, being able to survive during the Depression.
So go back now to that Talmudic piece. That
Right, exactly.
So lots of Jews were in the Rabbi Yossi category. They weren't going to say anything.
Right.
They're not going to. In fact, they were changing their names to not be seen. Go ahead, pass the microphone back.
So just as interestingly on the Louis Brandeis story, I had an amazing. I've for years, my home in Israel. So I made Aliyah. I lived in Israel for many years, and I'm an Israeli citizen, and I can vote. And my home in Israel is Kibbutz Ein HaShofet. So Kibbutz Ein HaShofet was named for Louis Brandeis, and all of the people who were the older people when I was on kibbutz were the original pioneers who knew Louis Brandeis. It was named for him. They had a direct relationship with him. The archives there. So the interesting thing is that he as a result of what you're talking about right now, specifically was a Zionist, even though he was an American. He didn't see those things as inconsistent, and he understood the reason why you have to have an Israel is because of what was going on. Very much he understood it, so much so, and let me just say that his great-granddaughter is one of my best friends, who was on kibbutz with me all those years ago, and we maintained a relationship, and I know very much how she was educated and how, like, what the vibe is in her family. Like 100%, they're big time Zionists.
Right. It's a very powerful statement. Go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say that a couple things. One, I was at a Shavuot class, I think last year, and they were talking about synagogue iconography, and they were saying that in Russia, a lot of synagogues had, I think, an eagle, or that was like a symbol of the state. And they were doing that to show, like, hey, we're part of you. We're not different. And then they were talking about on the podcast how Brandeis was trying to make this greater alignment between Jews and America because, to say we're not, these other people, we're not, don't have this dual alliance type thing. It really is aligned. And I think it's also funny that this is the conflict that we think would be the conflict about the windows, because I was, that kind of gets away from there could be definitely a conflict about putting, Zionism at the forefront of the windows and the one with the Chalud theme.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely there.
Yeah, like I don't know. I just feel like we understand Zionism is complicated, so it's really hard to put that into a window. Just like a simple window. So
two more, and then I'm gonna.
Or I think he's first.
Going back to your question about the vote, I think when the vote is taken is contextual. You asked if it was taken today. There'd be a difference between today, 10 years ago, 10 years before that. The vote could swing different ways at different times. We've been talking about Louis Brandeis being the first Jewish Supreme Court justice. After, when he died, I can't remember now the specific names, but it was Frankfurter.
Jewish seat.
It became the Jewish seat.
Yeah, right.
The Jewish justice died, a Jew would take his place. Until Johnson did not, well, no, it was even Goldberg.
The woman who died.
Goldberg was Supreme Court justice.
Mm-hmm.
He left the court because he was asked to be the ambassador to the UN, and he expressed very strong feelings that he hated to leave the court. It was the best job he ever had. He loved it, and when he was no longer ambassador, Johnson didn't reappoint him, and then when Fortas, who had taken his place, left the court, he wasn't replaced by a Jew. So there was disagreement as to whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. Was it not important anymore to need a Jewish seat? And since then, we now have several. It's no longer an issue, but different times people feel different ways, and I think the vote you talk about would be different today, 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Okay. Well, okay. I would just add while you're passing the microphone. I think I do not believe, this is me talking, that the congregation would vote to have Abraham Lincoln or George Washington in stained glass today.
I agree.
I do not think they would say that. I think that they would there would be a majority vote that would say because they were slaveholders, or that Lincoln had very strong views about. Right. That I don't think they would put those windows up there with a sense of pride, even though you would argue, well, wait a minute, George Washington created the most positive environment that Jews had ever known up until that moment by welcoming them to as Jews to America. And Lincoln was the first president to allow Jews in the cabinet. So it's a very interesting issue. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to say a couple things. One is, I think it would be a really interesting exercise to have people, draw pictures of what they would want in the windows now. I was part of a theater.
I'll leave that to the next round.
I was part of a theater of the oppressed exercise where we had to draw the flag of our desired country. And I mean, there's a lot of things you could put, like everyone should sit under their vine and their fig tree and live in peace and unafraid, right? I mean, there's a lot of choices, and I think it would be interesting. But the other thing is, I wanted to get a little personal. I mean, when you're talking about every generation has its own views, well, I think it's important not to caricature a generation. I mean, my mother was born in 1923, and when we were talking about Romans, my mother was a Latin teacher. So, why somebody who's she was born 3 years after their family came here, by the skin of their teeth just before the quotas came down. And her first language was Yiddish, but she got interested in Latin and then she went in 1948-49, she went to Japan. She worked on a U.S. Air Force base in occupied Japan. She had a German-American boyfriend on the base. She came home the long way. She went to Manila, Karachi, all this stuff.
Help us understand.
Yeah. So she could have gone to Israel. She didn't. She wanted to see the pyramids. She told them she was Quaker, so she could get in to see the pyramids. She stopped to see her boyfriend's family in Germany on the way home. And then 6 years later, she married a Jew. And 2 years later, I was born. So, it's like, and I never heard like my mother's full story, but
an amazing story.
Yeah, and
it's an American story.
Like I said, don't caricature people by generation. People have their own experiences.
In closing our class, thank you. In closing our class, I think I'm gonna read I want to read the source number 4. Tal Becker says. So let's look at the whole page. This is Yehuda now talking. What changed over time, certainly after the Second World War, is that wedding of Jewish values, liberal values, American democracy was no longer a conscious choice. I think that's what's being challenged right now. It's just become part of the fabric of who American Jews were. They understood those values as fundamentally not in tension with each other. But what might be happening post-October 7th is Jews questioning whether it fully works in the ways that we wanted it to. Tal Becker, who's was Australian, but isn't an American society or the experience of Jews post-October 8th saying it doesn't work? It doesn't work, you see, your presence, to use Yossi Klein Halevi's language. Your presence here is conditional. You're not going to be able to reconcile this stuff. What is your response to that? So in the podcast, Yehuda Kurtzer attacks Yossi Klein Halevi. This was really interesting. It's the first time I've seen them do that. And then he says this: I just think I refuse to come to that conclusion until that conclusion is foregone. For American Jews, the hypothesis has been the American system can work to protect us. And the reason to believe that is that American Jews were in part the architects of the very vision of American democracy that would include Jews. We participated in that. In the second half of the 20th century, American Jews so benefited from the structure of liberalism that we became complacent about it ideologically and educationally. In Jewish schools, they don't teach civics in a serious way. That's true about America more generally. We don't teach the story to American Jews. So there's a lot of ideological work in Jewish education around Zionism, but far less about what is the project of Jewish values in American democracy. So that's where I think the urgency ultimately lies. What the future is going to look like for American Jews, I can't tell you. But when I look at the work of somebody like Charlie Savinor in Civic Spirit, He's out around the country trying to re-engage schools in teaching civics. What are the American values? What do we actually stand for? And what's the future? I can't tell you. But I will say that it's been a privilege to be part of this group with you and looking at the class. And I hope that you feel that this has been a valuable journey, and that the Hartman Institute should be we should express our gratitude for creating these opportunities. So thank you very much, everybody.
Can I make a personal comment? I've taken a lot of classes here. I've taken a lot of classes from you.
I want you to speak on the microphone. You're saying something nice about me.
I've taken a lot of classes from you. They all have a beginning and an end. There's a curriculum that you finish and it's done. I have to say this is the first class that I wish it weren't ending.
So all the other ones were not so great, huh?
You couldn't let it just go.
I keep taking them because they are great. But this one, the kind of conversation we have, I think you always, in the Hartman classes especially, you've always said, well, we want to have conversations and civil conversations and so on. But just what's gone on here, it would be nice if this were an every Sunday for a long time.
But also, I hope everybody else agrees. Thank you very much for including the first half hour this year. And I think that really added a lot more to the understanding of what we were discussing.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
AI.